All right, welcome in, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Absolutely. Always excited to dig into some fascinating history.
Today, we've got, well, a pretty unique set of sources about a guy named Keith Allen Campbell.
Oh, yeah, this one's interesting. We've got, let's see, biographical info, his actual military records, and poems written by his mother.
Poems. Wow, that's not
Right.
something we see every day.
Nope, definitely adds a whole other layer to understanding his life.
So who was this Keith Allen Campbell? Give us the rundown.
Well, from what I gather, he started with a dream, wanted to be an army doctor.
Noble goal.
Yeah, so he enlists in 1963 and almost immediately starts racking up achievements, airborne training, special forces. Like, he was determined to excel.
The whole 9 yards.
Exactly. But, Tila, here's where it gets really interesting. He earns a Bronze Star for bravery in the Dominican Republic before even getting to Vietnam.
Hold on, back up. Dominican Republic? I thought this was a Vietnam War story.
It becomes one, but this early act of courage is kind of foreshadowing, you know? Bronze Star means he did something heroic or meritorious.
So he was already proving himself under pressure.
Exactly.
Okay, so then Vietnam does happen.
Right. And he doesn't just get deployed, he actually re-enlists specifically to serve there. Like, he felt his skills were desperately needed.
I'm seeing a pattern here. This guy was seriously dedicated.
No kidding. And get this, 5 days after arriving in Vietnam, he's awarded a Bronze Star with a V device for valor.
5 days. What could he have possibly done in 5 days to earn that?
Well, the V device means valor in combat. So whatever he did, it was heroic and in direct confrontation with the enemy.
Talk about hitting the ground running.
Seriously.
Right.
And then all of this leads up to February 8th, 1967.
What happens on that day?
That's the day he earns the Distinguished Service Cross, second highest military award for valor. His actions that day, well, they went way above and beyond the call of duty, and that's what we're going to deep dive into.
All right, so paint us a picture. What's the situation on the ground on this day?
Okay, so Keith's unit, the 503rd Infantry, they're tasked with assaulting this heavily fortified Viet Cong bunker complex.
Those were notoriously tough to attack, right?
Brutal. And this one was no different. The fighting was intense, casualties were mounting fast.
Just a terrible situation all around.
Yeah, and the company leading the assault was hit especially hard. Tragically, their medics were among the casualties.
So they're pinned down, taking heavy fire, and down without medical aid. I can't even imagine.
It is a desperate situation, and that's when Keith steps up. He volunteers to move to the front line.
He volunteered to walk into that chaos.
He did. And this is where his incredible bravery comes in. He starts treating wounded soldiers under intense enemy fire.
So he's basically a moving target himself.
Right. But somehow he manages to keep his cool under pressure. Then he spots a wounded soldier about 50 meters ahead, completely exposed near an enemy bunker.
50 meters, that's what, like half a football field?
About that, yeah. Incredibly dangerous distance to cover when you're under fire.
Absolutely.
But Keith, without hesitation, he calls for covering fire and just starts running towards the wounded soldier.
We're running through a literal war zone.
Yep. Bullets flying everywhere, grenades exploding. He's forced to take cover behind this tiny mound of dirt. And while he's there, he manages to engage and kill a Viet Cong sniper.
A sniper. Where was this guy?
Hiding in a tree, firing on Keith from above.
So just to be clear, he takes out an enemy sniper while trying to reach a wounded comrade. It's almost unbelievable.
It really is. It shows you the kind of training and presence of mind he had. But he still has about 20 meters to cover to reach the wounded soldier.
So what does he do?
He crawls the rest of the way, drags the wounded soldier to the cover of a nearby tree, and starts treating his wounds.
And that's when HES hit.
Yeah, tragically. The tree offered some protection, but it was too small to shield them both. Keith kept shielding the soldier with his own body while giving medical aid, and that's how he was mortally wounded.
He gave his life to save another.
He did. His actions saved that soldier's life, no question.
It's hard to even put into words.
Mm.
To act with that much courage and compassion, knowing the risks, it's truly remarkable.
It really is. And honestly, his story is about so much more than just medals and military honors. It speaks to a much deeper level of human goodness, you know, even in the face of something so awful.
You mentioned we also have some poems from his mother, Esther B. Gates.
Mm-hmm.
How do his words add to all of this?
They give us a glimpse into the human cost of war, the grief, the pride of a mother who lost her son, but also a powerful testament to his legacy.
Okay, so let's talk about these poems. You mentioned one called Gold Star Mom. What even is that?
So during wartime, families with loved ones serving would display a Blue Star banner, in their window. If that person was killed in action, the Blue Star got replaced with a gold one.
Oh, wow, that's heavy.
It is, and this poem really captures that agonizing transition from hope to grief that so many families went through.
I can only imagine the pain.
Her words are just raw, honest. She talks about the pride of hanging that blue star, the constant worry, and then that moment when it turns to gold.
It's a reminder of the burden so many families carried during wartime, a burden most of us can't even comprehend.
Exactly.
She also wrote a poem called Arlington's Vietnam Dead, which is obviously very specific.
Right. In this one, she's imagining Keith and the other fallen soldiers walking among the headstones at Arlington at night. And they're discussing history, their sacrifices. She wonders if they question whether it was all worth it.
If 20 years was too much to give, it's a heartbreaking thought, honestly.
It is. She wrote another one the day President Nixon announced the end of hostilities in Vietnam, called it Now Sleep.
Wow. Powerful title.
She's talking directly to Keith, telling him he can finally rest, that his sacrifice wasn't in vain, that he achieved his goal of saving lives, easing pain.
It sounds like she found a way to honor his memory through writing.
Absolutely. And she even wrote a poem about the picture we have of Keith, called it Portrait of Stott Keith A. Campbell.
Oh, I remember seeing that one in the file.
She writes from his perspective, urging us to look into his eyes and see the sacrifices made for freedom, to live our lives to the fullest, be strong, help others, just like he did.
A message we could all take to heart, for sure. But there's another piece of her writing that's really stuck with me, what she called the prophecy, written in his baby book when he was born.
Ah, yeah, that one's incredible.
She's dreaming of all these amazing things he might achieve, right? A surgeon, a minister, a teacher, an artist. But then she says, perhaps you will be none of these, but a simple man who will live for the joy of helping others. I could ask for no more.
It's like she saw his path right there before he could even walk or talk. A path of service, selflessness.
It's almost eerie how accurate it turned out to be.
Right, but it's also this amazing insight into his character, even at such a young age. And it leads us to another important part of Keith's story, the effort to have his Distinguished Service Cross upgraded to the Medal of Honor.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Tell us more about that.
Well, his family, friends, former commanders, they all believe that what he did that day in Vietnam deserves the nation's highest military honor. And they've been working to make it happen.
So there's a real movement to recognize his bravery at an even higher level.
There is. And it seems to be gaining traction. In 2006, Fort Sam Houston dedicated a library in Keith's honor.
A whole library. Yeah.
And during that ceremony, Major General Russell J. Chur, the commander of the Army Medical Department Center and School, he acknowledged this effort, said, "We anxiously await the decision by our Washington leadership."
That's a pretty strong statement coming from someone in his position.
It is. It shows the respect and admiration Keith's story still evokes within the military community.
So it sounds like there's substantial support for this.
There is, but this is where you, our listener, come in. You can help make this happen.
Wait, hold on. What can our listeners do? This is all happening at such a high level.
More than you think. You can contact your members of Congress and urge them to support this effort.
Really? Like just writing a letter could actually make a difference?
Absolutely. Every voice counts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How would someone even go about doing that?
It's surprisingly simple. Find your representative's contact info online, easy to find. Then write a concise email or letter expressing your support for upgrading Keith's Distinguished Service Cross to the Medal of Honor. Explain why you believe he deserves it.
So highlight his actions, his courage, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be long or complicated, just genuine and from the heart.
I have to admit, I didn't realize our listeners could have this kind of impact. That's pretty amazing.
It is. Don't underestimate the power of your voice. When enough people speak up, those in power listen.
This is incredible. We'll definitely make sure to include all the instructions on how to contact your representatives on our website. But for now, let's dive a bit deeper into Keith's life and legacy. All right, so before that, we were talking about how our listeners could actually help with getting Keith's award upgraded. Writing to your congressperson. I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
It really is. And to understand why it's such a big deal, I think we should talk about how significant the Medal of Honor itself actually is.
Yeah, it's not just handed out for any act of bravery.
No, definitely not. It's the highest military award for valor, specifically in action against an enemy.
So battlefield courage, basically.
Exactly. It's given to those who distinguish themselves, and I'm quoting here, conspicuously by gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of their lives above and beyond the call of duty.
Okay, so those are some pretty strong words. Gallantry, intrepidity. It sounds like it's reserved for truly extraordinary acts of heroism.
It is. And those words, they perfectly describe what Keith did that day. He didn't even hesitate to run towards danger. He engaged the enemy, and he shielded another soldier with his own body.
Just incredible. So based on what we've learned about Keith's actions on February 8th, 1967, it definitely sounds like he meets those criteria.
Yeah, he absolutely exhibited that level of valor. But there is a formal process for upgrading a military award, and it involves a thorough review.
Of what exactly?
Well, they look at the original citation, obviously, but also witness statements and any new evidence that's come up since the initial award was given.
So in Keith's case, they would be going back and examining everything that happened that day very carefully.
Right. Looking for anything and everything that supports the case for the upgrade. And this is where the efforts of his family, friends, and those former commanders are so important.
I can see that.
They're gathering evidence, putting the pieces together, making sure Keith's story is heard loud and clear.
Their dedication is really something. And the fact that Major General Zur actually mentioned it at the library dedication, that says a lot, don't you think?
Absolutely. It shows that this isn't just a personal mission for them. Keith's story resonates with people who understand the weight of his actions, even those in positions of authority.
Okay, so for those of you listening, remember you can contact your members of Congress. Your voice can actually make a difference here.
It really can.
You know, while we're talking about Keith's story, I wanted to bring up his mother's poems again. You know, they offer such a unique perspective on his life. There's one that mentions the thunder of silence that soothed his soul as he parachuted from the sky.
That's a beautiful image, isn't it? Like he found peace in those moments, even though it was dangerous.
It's incredible how she was able to capture those feelings, you know, that mix of excitement and serenity.
Yeah, she really had a way with words. In another poem, Out of the Clouds, she writes directly to Keith, describing what it felt like to jump from a plane.
Oh, I remember that one.
The wind, the feeling of falling. She even talks about him grasping St. Michael's wings as he dances on the air.
It's like she was right there with him, feeling the thrill and the danger.
Exactly. And she doesn't shy away from the risks either. Mentioning St. Michael's wings is a pretty clear acknowledgement that something could go wrong.
It reminds us that true bravery isn't about not being afraid, but about facing that fear head on.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And she ends that poem with the line, "All for my country's sake."
Powerful stuff. Her love for him was so clearly intertwined with pride in his service.
Absolutely. Her poems are a testament to the impact he had on everyone around him. And it's not just family and friends who are keeping his memory alive.
All right, we were talking earlier about the library dedicated to him at Fort Sam Houston.
Exactly. And during that dedication, Major General Sir, he wasn't just talking about the library. He said, "We anxiously await the decision by our Washington leadership about upgrading the award."
Wow. So even back then, there was talk about getting him the Medal of Honor.
It wasn't just talk either. It was a public acknowledgement from a high-ranking official that this effort was underway.
And it's not just the library. The Army actually made a whole documentary about Army medics, and they featured Keith's story.
Yeah, they held him up as a prime example of courage and selflessness, which is amazing, right? It means his actions will keep inspiring people, maybe even future medics.
It really makes you think about how one person's bravery can have such a lasting impact.
It really does. We've seen that throughout Keith's whole story, haven't we?
Definitely. Now, before we wrap up, I want to hear from you, our listener. What part of Keith's story resonated most with you? Is it his incredible courage, his decision to risk his life for another, or maybe something else entirely? Share your thoughts with us on social media. We'd love to know what stood out to you.
We'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back, everyone. You know, as we're going through all this, it really makes you think about legacy, right? What does it even mean to leave a legacy? And how does Keith's story fit into that?
That's a big question, but I think Keith's life kind of gives us an answer, you know? It's not just about the medals or the recognition, it's about the things he stood for. Courage, compassion, that commitment to helping others no matter what. Those are the qualities that really stick with you.
It's true. And you know what keeps coming back to me? His mother's prophecy, the one from his baby book. It's wild how she saw that in him, even as a baby, that potential for good.
I know, right? Perhaps you will be none of these, she wrote, but a simple man who will live for the joy of helping others. I could ask for no more. Chills every time.
Like she knew somehow. And it makes you think we don't have to be soldiers or, heroes in the traditional sense to make a difference.
Exactly. We can all try to live by those same values. Courage, compassion, selflessness, even in our everyday lives.
It's about the small things too. Volunteering, standing up for what's right, even just being kind to the people around us.
Those things add up, you know? When enough people do them, it can really change things. It's like a ripple effect spreading outwards.
And those ripples, sometimes they become waves, inspiring others to do even more.
Like the people working to get Keith's award upgraded. They're doing it because his story touched them, inspired them to take action.
It shows you the power of one person's legacy and reminds us that we all have the ability to make a difference, big or small, to leave the world a little better than we found it.
And don't forget, our listeners can be a part of that. If Keith's story moved you, reach out to your representatives. Let them know you support the effort to get him the Medal of Honor. Your voice matters. It really does.
It does. We've got all the details on our website, so check that out if you're interested. But for now, I want to leave you with this thought. Keith Allen Campbell's story is more than just battlefield heroism. It's about what humans are capable of, even in the darkest times. Choosing compassion, making a difference, it's a reminder that we all have that potential inside us.
And it's a challenge to all of us to live that way, to be a little bit braver, a little bit kinder, to make Keith's story not just an exception, but the way things should be.